Hello and welcome to Crowforest Reviews, and welcome to another video essay. This one covering the TV series Dollhouse. This is actually an episode that I've been wanting to do for quite a while now. I saw this show a while back and found it intriguing and I wanted to talk about it. And this is firmly in my wheelhouse, being doll-related media, which is, for whatever reason, what I decided to cover. But there is just one problem. It is way too long to cover in one of my traditional reviews. But things have changed now. Long-form video essays are now popular. So I figured maybe this is the time to resurrect this idea and try and cover a long-form video essay on the whole series. I had considered just tackling part of it, maybe doing an episode review like I have done for some series, but this one being serialized storytelling instead of episodic, that really didn't make any sense, so it's kind of an all-or-nothing deal. But with the video essay, I guess I can go for broke. So this is Dollhouse. So as I mentioned before, a while back I watched the Joss Whedon TV series Dollhouse. At the time I quite liked it, but now, well, a lot has changed in the intervening years, and I'm wondering if I'll still look at it the same way. And honestly, I'm kind of curious to find out. I mean, sure, it was a messed up plot involving desperate people literally selling their bodies to rich investors so that they could do anything they want with them. And not just weird sex stuff either, literally anything, like rob a bank, or personal assassin. Anything. Well, okay, there is one rule per the Dollhouse rulebook. You are not allowed to hunt them for sport. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So how is all of this possible, you may ask? How are people able to perform all of these crazy feats? Surely they still have some physical limitations and wouldn't be able to do all this crazy shit. Well, the suspension of disbelief plot device of this show is a bit complicated, but let's try to break it down. Okay, so there's this pimp organization where these desperate people go to. They sign up for the program, signing this extensive liability waiver, and then they have their minds erased. Well, not erased exactly, more downloaded and saved to a floppy disk or something, but you get the idea. You probably don't get the idea because this idea is batshit. But you get the idea. Then, when clients, Johns, come to the agency looking to rent a person for business or recreational purposes, a new artificial personality is downloaded into the, well, they call them dolls, hence Dollhouse. So a new personality is downloaded into the doll, and then they're ready to go for whatever perverted or occasionally not perverted fantasies that the John has. So, obviously, that's a lot. And yes, it is indeed very messed up. But at the time that I first saw this series, I kind of thought that was the point. Like, this was a dark satire of the way that we treat sex workers, stigmatizing them while at the same time forcing them into the work through systems of inequality in this capitalist nightmare world. And how those same people who so loudly decry the immorality of sex work are so often the very same ones who are forcing sex workers to do all of the weird sex stuff over and above the actual job description. So, you know, there's that too. And yes, this interpretation may very well still hold up, but I now have reason to suspect that this may not have been the intention. Given some of the recent allegations that have come to light against Joss Whedon, the motivation may have been let's explore various systemic injustices surrounding sex work, and more, I just really want to make a show about metaphorical sex workers in order to get women into skimpy outfits and compromising situations. Of course, I don't have any evidence of that, I'm just speculating here, but given what we now know about him, I kind of have to wonder. But of course, authorial intent is not the only valid interpretation of a piece of media, and I believe that there is still something of value to be found here if we apply a death of the author reading. So basically, if we apply this reading and see this series as a satire of work under capitalism, then the Dollhouse program essentially becomes an extreme form of dissociation. Work under capitalism sucks. We all know that. We all have to dissociate at work in order to get through the day. But just imagine, if you could sign up for this program, you wouldn't even have to do that. It would already be done for you, and better than you ever could. You might dissociate at work and think about being somewhere else, pretend you're somewhere else, pretend that the day is already done. We all do that. But with this program, just think of the possibilities. You can sign up for a 5-year contract, and your brain can literally be somewhere else while your body does the work. Your brain is stored to a hard drive on a shelf somewhere while your body does the possibly distasteful work. And whether that work is distasteful or not, you don't ever have to know. That's not something you have to worry about at all. Once your time is done, the imprints are removed, your original personality is replaced, and you can go on about your life without ever having to worry about what happened in those missing 5 years. And as for the possibility that you could be killed on the job, which is a very real possibility given the lax safety standards at this place, so let's say that you are killed on the job and you are never able to be put back in your original body and your contract is thus never fulfilled. Well, you don't have to worry about that either, because you won't ever know that. You'll just still be sitting on that shelf in your hard drive in a form of suspended animation, and if you're never put back, you will never know. So either way, what do you have to lose, really? Now, of course, that's extreme, and for reasons which we'll get into, it's really not a good idea. But it is understandable why this would be appealing on the surface. And why this could work as a metaphor if that was the intention. But we'll get into this and circle back around to what the original intention was. But for now, it is an interesting idea, so let's see what this series has in store for us with this over-the-top, ultimate dissociation. But on the other hand, maybe I'm way off base here, and there's actually nothing of value to be found here. Maybe I'm misremembering, or I saw something that was never there in the first place. I don't know, but I'm curious to find out. So I'm going to do a rewatch of the entire series to do a deeper analysis of it. As much as I'd like to believe that this is a satirical look at how capitalism is inherently exploitative to all types of labor and how sex workers are particularly vulnerable to this type of exploitation, I'm just not sure that's the case. With recent allegations made against Joss Whedon, along with the problematic allegory that was apparently supposed to be at the heart of Firefly, let's just say that I have lost faith in the former master. But still, let's give this thing a fair chance and see what we find out. This is Dollhouse. Also, before we go any further, it should be noted that sex work is work, and the only reason that sex work is inherently exploitative is because all work under capitalism is inherently exploitative. For more information on this, I highly encourage you to go watch Vera Wild's incredible video on the topic, Angel Dust, Has Been Hotel, and the Humanity of Sex Workers. Linked in the description. One of the things that I wanted to look into when I was doing research to make this video essay was seeing what other people had said about this series, but there's surprisingly little out there. In fact, I only found 2 sources that mentioned it at all. One was an episode of the Women at Work podcast, where they talked about it briefly during a live panel at a convention talking about women in science fiction.
Also mentioning the 7 of 9 thing and how she was like orphan, that also goes back to like the Black Widow thing, but I was thinking about the Whedonverse and I was thinking of like Echo from Dollhouse. Nobody really talks about that show, but it had the same kind of concept of being wiped out mentally, you know, being erased. And she was a revolutionary, like resistance leader who then, you know, was wiped and turned into this essentially a pleasure doll, you know, and then she started getting bits and pieces of her humanity back and trying to then fight the good fight once more.
Very much in Raven.
And the other was this video from Princess Weeks, where she talks about Sucker Punch and briefly reads some comments comparing it to Dollhouse.
Layers and all. So what did audiences think?
To the degree that Baby Doll and her pals are forced into becoming fetish objects, Sucker Punch contains its own critique. Though Joss Whedon's fascinating TV series Dollhouse explored similar themes with far more wit and skill.
It's there's a lot to unpack with all of that.
And incidentally, she says unambiguously that Dollhouse sucks, which, fair enough. I cannot argue that position. Now, with that said, let's finally get into this thing. The series follows a woman named Echo, who's desperate for money and so signs up for the aforementioned bullshit program. Or, more precisely, it follows Echo's body. The real Echo, who is not actually named Echo, her name prior to this experiment was Caroline, but we won't see her again until the very end of the series, so you can pretty much forget about that. And to make it even more confusing, the version of Echo that we will be following will be constantly switching around between various artificial personalities. And eventually will even develop her own Neo-personality based on a mashup of all of the former personality algorithms that she has been downloaded with. But I'm getting ahead of myself. And we're also introduced to the FBI agent who is going to be investigating Echo. Anyway, Echo's first real mission after the nothing of a primer that we were given is to rescue the daughter of some politician. Because why not? They have the technology to graft any skill set and personality onto their dolls, so that's the perfect solution to their problem. They don't even run any risk of Echo finding out too much and creating a political scandal, since they're just gonna wipe her memory again anyway. Also, apparently they can alter the doll's eyesight and give them asthma. Somehow. That's a little weird. Episode 2 sees a rogue active named Alpha, who apparently has been able to retain memories and skill sets even after multiple wipes. So apparently the technology they're using is not quite as perfect as they think it is. But oh well, I'm sure that won't come back to haunt them in a future episode. Spoiler alert, it will. Oh, also, Echo is hunted for sports, which I won't go into too much detail on since I already mentioned it earlier, but yeah, the director of the Dollhouse is not happy about it, and that's pretty much their one rule. So, yeah, there's that. Also, there's this tidbit from episode 3 where we learned that apparently dolls can be programmed with multiple different missions at the same time, with a secret submission that even the doll doesn't know about.
Persona and parameter, two separate elements. She must protect Reina, which she will do instinctively and unconsciously.
So she doesn't even know she's a bodyguard.
Wow, that is... well, actually, I don't know. Is that more messed up than the rest of this? Well, I'm not sure. I guess consider this a footnote to inconclusive.
Technology exists.
Somebody made a monkey tango, right? It doesn't mean it's being used on people.
It does. It means that.
He's not even wrong. If the technology exists, people will find a way to weaponize it, especially to turn a profit. So returning to the subplot involving the FBI agent investigating the dollhouse, he meets with a member of Russian intelligence, thus giving us our first hint that this secret underground ring of dollhouses is in fact a global problem.
I start throwing the word dollhouse around like it's a myth, okay? Young people having their personalities replaced so that they could be the perfect date.
But unfortunately, before they can get anywhere with their investigation, the dollhouse kidnaps the Russian agent and turns him into a doll against his will in order to feed false information to the FBI agents. Because that's what innocent people do when they're being investigated. And whatever you thought about the already dubious consent of the dollhouse, given how they prey on desperate people and get them to literally sign away their lives in such a way that they will be completely incapable of giving consent in any of the actual specific missions that they go on, well, yeah, throw all that dubious consent out the window, because this conversion is 100% non-consensual. Also, forceful conversion therapy against one's will? Could it be a metaphor? Well, considering the source, probably not an intentional one. So anyway, back with Echo on her current mission to save a pop star, the one that has the secret sub-mission hidden within the mission, you'll recall. You probably won't recall, but I'm reminding you. We get this interesting insight about how both Echo and the pop star were both grown in a lab to be exactly what the people want.
I don't exist. I'm not a real person. I'm everybody's fantasy. God help me if I try not to be. No, you weren't grown in a lab, but I was.
But again, I'm just not sure about the source on this. In light of recent allegations, this comes across less as a genuine, deep, meaningful insight, and more as lampshading his fetishes under the disguise of a feminist power fantasy, which, come to think of it, pretty much sums up his entire career. So we get an interesting bit of foreshadowing when Echo endangers the life of the client she's supposed to protect in order to protect her friend from the dollhouse. A friend who she should not even remember at this point due to all the memory wipes. Plus the fact that memories are not supposed to form in the first place while in doll states. So apparently Echo is starting to retain memories in much the same way that Alpha did. But on the other hand, her insane gambit does pay off, and she manages to save both the client and her friend. So overall, inconclusive. But the Dollhouse executives are still pretty spooked by it all, and are going to be keeping a pretty close eye on her going forward. Then get a load of this weird scene, wherein this couple apparently hired Echo to be a midwife, paying the Dollhouse's exorbitant fees for a service that they could have just paid someone to do, like, normal? Oh, to be rich and insane. Or, hell, maybe this is just a memory of her previous life. A memory that she shouldn't have access to at this point. Either way, very strange. So we learn that Echo and a couple of the other dolls are bonding well in doll state, despite the fact that they really shouldn't have the ability to bond, or to even remember about each other's very existence. But the scientist guy is unconcerned, since birds have the same grouping instinct.
They're grouping.
Are you saying they remember each other?
No, the wipes are clean. This goes deeper than memory, into instinctual survival patterns. Flocking. Whole mess of sparrows turning on a dime, salmon trucking upstream.
Sure. whatever you need to tell yourself.
They volunteered for this?
So we're told.
So anyway, on the heist, because you knew there was going to be a heist at some point, Echo compares herself to Bonnie and Clyde.
Hey, if she's the best, funny I've never heard of her.
You've heard of Bonnie and Clyde, right? Bonnie and Clyde, they wanted fame. They also got dead. I'll pass on that.
Gotta hand it to the Dollhouse. They spared no expense in programming in the ability to bullshit an answer. Though, on the other hand, there is a certain logic to that. But unfortunately, Echo gets locked in the vault when one of the heisters decides to betray the others. And when she calls her handler for instructions, she accidentally gets deprogrammed remotely and returns to doll state in the middle of a mission.
Charlie, go now.
What's wrong with her?
Hysterical woman syndrome?
Well, shit. I guess their technology is a little glitchy.
How bad is it?
Being wiped is being born. It's traumatic. And that could lead to a coma state, or it could turn her into Carrie at the prom.
Hey, I understand that reference now! Also, that's a very Darmakian way of putting that. Carrie at the prom, at Tanagra. Also, Dollhouse Echo bonds with this distorted Picasso painting, because they're both broken.
This one's broken.
You know, look who's talking.
Yeah, we've all been there.
You can either get broken or you can be the one doing the breaking.
Are those the only choices?
So anyway, they try to figure out who's responsible for the remote wipe of Echo, and they have this exchange.
He had to break into our system, which is impossible. He had to get Echo's cell number.
Or she.
Or they.
Hey, check it out! They're non-binary inclusive!
It has to be a they. I mean, look at this build. I mean, it's not even science, it's art.
Hell yeah! Only a non-binary person could have pulled this off. We've got mad skills. Then there's this.
We're bad guys.
I'm a bad guy.
Are we the baddies?
Okay, that line was a classic in Hot Fuzz, but here it's just kind of sad. Echo is in doll state with no memory, and is just waking up to the realization that her employers are terrible people.
What's my name?
Taffy.
When I'm there, my name is something else.
Anyway, Echo's doll friend Sierra talks Echo out of her current predicament, and so she lives to be exploited another day. Also, it's worth noting that the Dollhouse fake-hired Sierra to rescue Echo, paying her a lot of money to do so.
We'll pay double your usual fee to extract the team.
Before wiping her memory and taking the money back. That's just rude! I mean, I know they're an evil organization, but that's just rude! Also this.
I tried to help you. If your body turns up and tells a different story, then that'll give me information too.
The FBI doesn't work like that.
Are you criticizing Joss Whedon's writing? I mean, fair. You're not wrong. This really is more of a CIA tactic. Allegedly. Please don't sue me! Or, like, disappear me. Or anything. Also, I like how the group shower that the dolls all use has an opaque screen around it. I mean, their employers are freaky pimps, but they're not perverts. So cut to this creepy cult, wherein the members are all completely brainwashed and have no thoughts or feelings of their own. And for some reason, the FBI wants the Dollhouse to investigate. Oh, the irony! And so they send Echo in as an undercover operative, temporarily blinding her in order to use her eyes as cameras to transmit a live feed back to them. Because that's just science. Also, I may have spoken too soon about these freaky pimps not being perverts, because it turns out that they film all of the shower sessions and will be going through all of the footage to ensure that all of the dolls in doll state remain, properly flaccid.
I was looking in the shower. Man reaction.
Victor had an erection?
I am not fucking kidding. These people are, I'm gonna cut to commercial. Unlike Joss Whedon, I believe that prostitution services should be available to everyone, not just the super wealthy. That's why I created the discount prostitution warehouse, where everyone has equal access. More saving, more doing. That is the power of the Whore Depot. Yeah, I'm cancelled. That's fair. So anyway, back with the cult. Of course it turns out that they're stockpiling guns, because this is Joss Whedon's Waco fanfiction. This is not going to end well. Also, Echo is slapped hard enough to restore her sight, which naturally disables the camera feed back to the dollhouse. Again, that's just science. So it turns out that apparently Doll Victor sexually assaulted Doll Sierra, but Victor has no memory of doing so, although apparently Sierra does, at least in a subconscious way. Plus, it sounds as if Victor at the time probably thought that it was consensual due to a defective residual imprint. So really, he didn't so much assault Sierra, so much as the faulty program assaulted both of them. Which of course implicates the dollhouse as the real perpetrators here, except for the fact that this was all apparently just an accident. It's kind of an interesting setup for a complicated, morally gray clusterfuck of a situation, except that I'm not at all confident that Joss Whedon can handle a storyline like this. I guess we'll see where this goes, but even if this is handled relatively well, this is still an extremely uncomfortable subplot. Especially if it turns out that this is all just to set up this line.
Maybe she's broken. You figure? She's broken?
They're all broken.
Yeah. I think we had already pretty well established that. We didn't really need this subplot to further establish that. Okay, so fortunately it turns out that Victor is actually innocent. It was in fact one of Sierra's handlers who actually assaulted her and framed Victor for it, even going so far as to gaslight Victor into believing that he had in fact done something wrong, although he didn't even know what he had done wrong, or what he was supposed to have done.
I did something bad.
What did you do?
Nobody will tell me.
So, that handler's a piece of shit. For many numerous reasons. So yeah, this episode was pretty rough, but it does all go to show how completely helpless the dolls are and how completely at the mercy of their handlers they are. Victor and Sierra were both victimized by this creepy handler, although in different ways. And they were both completely helpless to do anything about it. So the episode ends with the head of the dollhouse overseeing the torture of the creepy handler, which I can't even find it in me to object. Although it is still very much the dollhouse that is complicit in this act, since they're the ones who put the dolls in such a helpless state to begin with. So, yeah, it's, not really solving the entire problem here, but I guess it's a step in the right direction. Also, Echo beats up the FBI guy who's been following her, and manages to deliver a message to him from a double agent within the dollhouse who reprogrammed her to do so.
The dollhouse is real. We have a person inside.
I have to take down the dollhouse.
There are over 20 dollhouses.
So that's complicated. And then they fridge FBI agent's girlfriend for no reason. Wait, no. It turns out that she was actually a sleeper agent for the dollhouse this whole time, and so they remotely wipe her in order to bring her back in as a regular agent. Wait, didn't they explicitly say earlier that they couldn't do that?
You've stated that remote wipes aren't possible. I've said I can't do them.
And yet their entire plan relied on them being able to do that? And this is the second time they've done that, even if the first time was by accident? I'm starting to suspect that this show is not very well written. So then, in episode 7, we learn that the drug that the dollhouse uses to suppress the memories of the dolls has somehow escaped containment and ended up on a college campus where it has already killed several people. Wow. How are these supposed to be the good guys again? Also, while Echo is out on another freaky engagement, she happens to see a news report about the leaked drugs, and this triggers a memory that she's not supposed to have.
It appears to be a case of a stressed-out student who didn't know how to ask for help. Counseling will be available on the campus.
So Echo's handler shows up and asks Echo if she'd like a treatment, which is the fail-safe phrase that they use to stop an engagement that's gone south. But this time it doesn't work.
Would you like to have a treatment?
No.
That's not supposed to be possible, but on the other hand, at this point it is becoming increasingly clear that the dollhouse does not have a handle on their technology. So we learn that Echo, back in the days when she was still Caroline, her pre-doll personality, tried to take down the parent company of the dollhouse, which does explain how the dollhouse got their claws into her in the first place. Also, everyone on campus, as well as everyone back at the dollhouse, have all gone crazy due to exposure to the drug. But the dolls are immune due to multimodal reflection sorting.
Using multimodal reflection sorting.
But at the same time, the dolls keep glitching, which mimics the symptoms of the drug. Wait, so they're immune to the one thing, but at the same time are vulnerable to another thing that has the exact same symptoms as the first thing? Well, that's pointlessly complicated. So it turns out that the guy that Echo has been working with throughout this entire episode is in fact the one who breached the drug's containment in order to sell it himself on the black market. Which, yeah, should have seen that one coming. And when the head of the dollhouse catches him, she gets him alone in a room and gives him the same speech that she gave Echo at the beginning of the series, thus manipulating him into a life of doll servitude as well. That's kind of their go-to thing when people try to steal from them, or take them down, or do anything they don't like. Meanwhile, the situation inside the dollhouse is continuing to deteriorate, with dolls retaining more memories than imprint fragments, resulting in the dollhouse's total control slipping a little more and more each day. The head of the dollhouse is inclined to simply breach all of the contracts of the dolls and send them all to the attic. So the next night, while the dolls are sleeping in their pods, Echo wakes up with memories of her previous life, but no memories of how she got to where she is. So naturally she freaks out, waking up all of the others around her in their pods. Well, shit. This is not going to end well. So Echo and her 4 friends continue to walk around the dollhouse with full self-awareness, but they quickly realize, based on the zombie-like actions of their fellows, that they need to pretend that they also have no thoughts in order to be safe. But one of them gets caught acting too normal, and gets taken away for re-brainwashing, thus confirming what the others already suspected. And of course, the one who gets caught is the one who we had not previously been following. R.I.P. Redshirt. I mean, he's not dead, but it still applies. Also, there's this awkward bit where they overhear fragments of conversations from the executives of the dollhouse to the effect of how they're going to find them and put them down, which in any other series would be a setup for a comedic misunderstanding, but in this series, no, that's definitely exactly what they are trying to do here. So that's awkward. So anyway, they make it up to the parking garage and steal a car in an attempt to escape, but the dollhouse has eyes on them. Echo's friends manage to get away, but Echo decides to go back into the dollhouse to try and rescue the rest of the dolls. Because even in her state, and even in the situation that she's found herself in, she's still the most morally grounded character in this show.
I can't leave. That's a people warehouse.
Upon gaining freedom, Sierra immediately goes to confront the man who sold her into slavery for the crime of rejecting his advances. Wow, what the fuck? And apparently the Dollhouse still signed her despite that. So much for informed consent. Also, get a load of this scene where people are trying to escape from literal slavery, and their first instinct upon seeing a cop is to hide. Yeah, good instinct. Back inside, Echo holds a gun to the director's head, and forces her to release all of the remaining dolls. The dolls all walk out of the dollhouse en masse, but then they just turn around and go back in, because they have nowhere else to go. Even Echo's friends who made it out earlier ultimately turn around and come back, because they realize that the outside world has nothing to offer them. And so the system continues. And then it's revealed that this entire situation was entirely pre-planned by the Dollhouse as a way of ultimately breaking them. So that regardless of any memories that might resurface, they will never attempt to escape. But still, one thing that the Dollhouse didn't anticipate did still end up coming from this. When Doll November, aka FBI agent's former girlfriend, manages to get a message out to FBI agent, telling him that she's been held in an underground facility. So, something's definitely going to come of that. In the next episode, we learn that apparently there's a spy in the Dollhouse, as evidenced by a microchip found in the imprint chair. A chip that apparently has the ability to alter imprints, and thus reprogram dolls from their intended parameters. Also, Echo wants to help with the situation, and even in doll state, she knows full well that she can be programmed with the necessary skills.
I can help you. You make people different. You can make me help.
Yeah, she shouldn't know that, but at this point, no one should be surprised. And speaking of spies, the Dollhouse reprograms Doll November as Millie, the FBI agent's girlfriend, in order to spy on the FBI agent via hidden sub-imprints.
I have a message for you from inside the Dollhouse. The Dollhouse is likely to discover that we've been placing messages in their imprints. They've been using this body to spy on you for months.
Okay, I guess she's not so much spying on him as she's delivering a secret message to him to stay away from the Dollhouse, but she's still doing it via secret sub-imprint, so Imprint Millie is completely unaware of the information that Doll November just imparted. Sorry if that's confusing. This show is a lot. Anyway, on to the train heist. Because you knew there was going to be a train heist. This is a Joss Whedon production. Although, this one is over remarkably quickly. Damn, those Dollhouse people are efficient with their Joss Whedon cliches. So Doll Sierra, in imprinted secret agent form, assumes the identity of one of the passengers on the train in order to infiltrate whatever the hell this place is. Meanwhile, with Doll Victor, we follow him as he embarks on a mission of his own. This one in the vein of a romantic encounter with the head of the Dollhouse. That has all kinds of ethical concerns. Is it spelled out in their contract that the director of the Dollhouse herself might take advantage of them? Probably. But this is still creepy. Also, there's the little matter that the director told everyone that she was going to be out of town for a few days doing a work audit for her bosses, the higher-ups in the organization, and turns out that was a lie. So she left her post during a crisis for no reason and lied about it. It's not looking so good for her ethics-wise. But hey, she's really sad about it, so that's something. It's not much, but it's something. Back at the Dollhouse, Echo gets programmed to help find the spy, much to the chagrin of the interim director, because apparently Sierra's train heist was already supposed to address the issue of the spy. And indeed, we get a call from Sierra confirming that she did in fact find the identity of the mole. Somehow. Again, I really lost track of the whole train heist situation. And it's a good thing that Echo was brought in as backup, because it turns out that the head of security / interim director was the real mole the whole time, and he just framed some random guy to take the fall for him. What a nice guy! So they wiped the guy's memory and sent him to the attic, and Echo's former handler gets promoted to the new head of security position, since the position's open now. And Echo is sad to see her former handler go, although she really shouldn't be, but I guess that's just kind of par for the course at this point.
Echo, I'd like you to meet your new handler. His name is Travis.
Do you trust me?
Anyway, the next episode opens with...
What's wrong? You look terrible.
You're dead.
Well, that's confusing. And right out of the gate, too. They're not messing around with this one. So it turns out that what the director meant was that Echo had been imprinted with the personality of a dead client. So that makes sense. Wait, no. That doesn't make any sense at all. Why would they imprint her with the personality of a dead client? Not a very active role. Okay, so apparently she's a resurrected dead client. Apparently some crazy rich lady had it in her will that upon her death, she was to be plugged into the body of a doll so that she could solve her own murder. Okay? I guess that makes sense? I mean, it's good to have life goals, or death goals, or... I'm sorry, even for this show, this episode is really weird. So she goes to her own funeral. Oh, for fuck's sake! Meanwhile, back at the dollhouse, the scientist guy uses the chair to program Sierra into the perfect girlfriend for himself. Jesus Christ! That is not okay! Who would have thought these creepy-ass pimps would be so unethical? Anyway, Echo's former handler raises some ethical concerns about offering clients life after death, particularly how it relates to the client's immortality, and how that would necessarily mean that Echo does not ever get her body back. Or, on the flip side, it would mean that they would have to end up killing their client when the client refuses to leave Echo's body. Either way, very messy. But fortunately, after solving her own murder, Dead Lady is more than happy to step aside and go into the great beyond and let Echo have her body back. So, crisis averted? Why even bring it up if you're just gonna hand-wave it away? Oh, whatever. Anyway, the next episode sees Echo being sent on a mission to help a troubled little girl. And so the scientist guy imprints her with the little girl's own personality, but aged up to an adult, filling in the missing years with some made-up memories, giving her the best possible future. With the idea being that Echo will be able to show the little girl how she too can have the best possible version of a future for herself if she just goes on the right path and does all the stuff that Echo did in the fake memories, I guess. What? In this way, they hope to convince the little girl that there's hope for her. Well, that's an interesting idea. Ethically dubious, but interesting. Also this.
Think of yourself as the prince.
The prince was a boy.
Yeah, but that's not his fault.
Was that trans-affirming? Not sure. I guess I'll take what I can get. Meanwhile, the director gets the traitorous former security officer out of the attic to ask him a question about Alpha. And the FBI agent's partner and a agoraphobic pot grower break into the dollhouse. There is a lot going on in this show. Also, I should mention that the pot grower is apparently the one who designed the dollhouse, thus why his inclusion is essential to this operation. Apparently. So a dead body shows up related to the Alpha case, and so they slap a coroner program into Sierra so that she can do the autopsy for them. Damn, they will slap a program into a doll to solve any problem they have. It doesn't matter if they need a coroner and don't want to pay one, or if they're just feeling slightly horny. They don't think twice about it. So back with the FBI agent and the pot guy breaking into the dollhouse.
Sometimes when I go on stairs that don't have risers, I get this feeling, this awful sensation that something's gonna reach out and grab my ankle like a claw or a tentacle.
Well, someone's genre savvy. Also, we learned that those sleeping pods that the dolls all sleep in at night, yeah, they're locked.
The pods are locked.
She's locked into a pod.
This just gets better and better. And pot guy turns out to be Alpha. Well, shit. Also, what? And then Alpha rescues Echo. Okay, well, maybe Alpha's a little slash-happy, but I guess he's not all that bad. So Alpha drives away with Echo, but apparently he's having a lot of trouble keeping himself together. Apparently he's an amalgamation of a bunch of different imprints that weren't properly erased, and so got mashed together into this slasher-killer nightmare. So I guess Pot Guy was just the submissive personality that the dollhouse put in the driver's seat in an attempt to keep him under control, but now the dominant killer is surfacing as the dominant personality imprint. Wow, it's almost like you shouldn't be messing with people's brains with all this imprint nonsense. Also, this is getting kind of into Norman Bates territory. Why does this keep happening with these video essays? I mean, I guess the last one was kind of inevitable, come to think of it. So after having captured the FBI agent who broke into the dollhouse, the director decides that the only way forward is to form an alliance with the FBI agent, since they now have a common enemy in Alpha. And then we learn that Alpha apparently stole all of the imprints that have ever been used on Echo in order to upload them all into her head to make her like him. An unstable amalgamation of conflicting imprints. Oh, this just gets better and better. We further learn that apparently Alpha fell in love with Echo the first time that they were working together. Well, they were both in doll state. Which does explain why everyone was freaking out so much when Victor was apparently falling in love with Sierra while in doll form. Considering that the last time that happened, it ended like this. So Alpha wants for him and Echo to be together forever, but unfortunately he's completely unstable, and he's decided that the only way forward is to put Echo's original personality into another body so that Echo can confront her past. Literally. Well, I have to admit, there is a certain logic to that, if you're an unstable amalgamation of 41 psychopaths. Which he is. So we get a flashback giving us context for Alpha's initial mental break. Apparently he saw that another doll was more popular than Echo at the time, and overcome with jealousy on her behalf, he decided to slash the other doll's face in order to make her less desirable, and thus make Echo more popular by default. Again, there's a certain logic to that for a psychopath. Also, when Alpha went on his initial killing spree, apparently his very first victim was in fact himself, as he destroyed the hard drive containing his original personality. Oh, good. That's good. So Alpha loads all of Echo's old imprints into her head all at once, but his plan backfires. Instead of killing her own original personality as Alpha had expected, Echo instead attacks Alpha. Alpha and Echo have fundamentally different outlooks of their situation. Alpha sees himself as a god, more than the sum of his parts, and thus greater than average humanity. Echo, on the other hand, sees herself as nothing more than a broken hollow shell, and a tool of her various personalities. The woman containing Echo's original personality is killed, but Echo manages to save the hard drive that her personality is stored on. Also, it turns out that the doctor who's been treating Echo this whole time is in fact a doll herself, which she did not know about. The doctor herself did not know that she was an imprinted doll who was programmed to take care of the other dolls. I need to make this very clear because this is very confusing. The Doctor was in fact the doll whom Alpha first sliced up, which makes sense because the Doctor, this whole time, we have seen that she has these deep scars on her face, so... And so, instead of letting her out of her contract early, the director decided to have her reprogrammed as the resident physician instead. That way they wouldn't have to pay an outside contractor. Wow, they use the dolls for personal gain all the time here. So anyway, that's it for Season 1, except for the epitaph, but we'll come back to that. So anyway, on to Season 2.